Hello and thank you for joining us on the Capitol Report on NTD television. I'm Steve Lance. Here's a look at some of the stories we've been covering for you today. Inflation hits a 40-year high at 7.5%. Lawmakers are concerned it's going to ruin the economy, while the White House remains optimistic. Super Bowl Sunday is almost here, and we had a chance to speak with founder of the fan favorite Papa John's. Papa John Schnatter tells us how inflation is affecting all of us and expresses concerns over the direction of the pizza chain he founded. The massive trucker protest in Canada has inspired U.S. truckers. Now a group in the U.S. is planning a protest of their own, potentially impacting the Super Bowl and Biden's State of the Union address scheduled for March 1st. We share what we know about their route, including a plan to arrive at the nation's capital. Inflation continues to surge and has just hit a new 40-year high. This is according to a new report by the Department of Labor. The Labor Department said that consumer prices jumped 7.5% last month compared with the previous year. This is the fastest year-over-year increase since 1982. It's also well above Wall Street's estimates. The acceleration of price increases ranged broadly from food and furniture to airline fares and electricity, with used cars and trucks seeing the largest increase. And the bad news is experts say there are few signs inflation will slow down anytime soon. And lawmakers across the aisle are sounding the alarm over inflation. Democratic Senator Joe Manchin warns the situation will only get worse if the administration doesn't take action.
This inflation is real. It's harming people. It's 7.5%. That's a tax. And it continues to increase. It's not decreasing. So the feds have to step up to the plate and do something. The administration has to do. We all have to work together right now to get our financial house in order. If not, it's going to be absolutely horrible what it's going to do to the American economy.
Last December, Manchin killed the $2 trillion social spending and climate package pushed by the Democrats. He raised concerns about inflation and the overall cost of the Build Back Better legislation. Republicans also voiced their concerns.
Rampant inflation and soaring prices are crushing the American people.
However, the White House is more optimistic about inflation.
I expect inflation to come down significantly in 2022.
Saying that the administration's intervention is helping.
What are we doing to help? Is it helping? So at the ports, we know that the time that containers are spending in the ports is down significantly over the past few months. We know that shelves are stocked only 2 percentage points below where they were before this pandemic.
The Consumer Price Index has been rising on an annual basis for 6 consecutive months. Remnants of harsh pandemic-related restrictions are still plaguing businesses and the economy, and skyrocketing inflation continues to surge. To get some perspective on some of these challenges, we're happy to have founder and shareholder of Papa John's, John Schnatter. John Schnatter, founder of Papa John's, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Steve.
Now, John, first I want to ask you, a report just came out and inflation has just risen to 7.5%. This is higher than Wall Street's estimates. We're seeing a 40-year high. Will this have an impact on Papa John's, and how do you see it impacting the food industry?
Yes, I think with the supply chain issues and the labor shortages, we're seeing a lot of pressure now at Papa John's throughout the economy. But it's definitely having a significant impact on everybody's cost, and that includes Papa John's. The biggest problem we have right now is labor. We simply can't get people to come to work. And that in itself is problematic because our product quality has slipped and our service has slipped. And now all of a sudden we have to raise prices. So you got a double-edged sword of less quality, less service, and then you got to raise prices. And there we're losing customers.
Now, John, Papa John's CEO recently sent a letter to your customers in regard to store closings due to lack of manpower. It seems to me like pizza, especially with a strong delivery model, would be doing okay throughout the pandemic. What are some of the challenges you've been facing and why?
Well, the biggest problem Papa John's has, and I'm a shareholder of Papa John's, is we have no pizza experience at the C-suite at the board of director level. So in the past, when we had trouble with labor or cost or marketing or competition. We always had that fundamental strength of product quality and service to fall back on, demonstrable value, if you will. We no longer have that. I was at the PR firm last week, and we ordered 4 pizzas from Domino's Pizza, Little Caesars, and Papa John's. I couldn't tell which one was a Papa John's pizza. So we've commoditized our business. That forces you into the rat hole of, okay, you got to sell your product on price, because you don't have any differentiation with your quality. And there we're losing customers to our competition.
You know, I have to say, I think some of the unsung heroes throughout all of this pandemic, the lockdowns, everything, are some of the food delivery folks who deliver food to the public, many of whom, the public are in quarantine and have been sick from the virus. Do you think that that could be part of why it's hard to find staff in a shortage crisis?
Well, our executive team, they don't get out in restaurants. They don't go international. They don't know what's going on in the restaurants. And when, running a Papa John's business is extremely difficult. It's very arduous. And when you have folks running the company that don't know how to make a pizza, don't know how to relate to the people in the stores making the pizza, it's demotivating. It's demotivating, and I think that's why we've lost a lot of our good talent. We've turned every single executive over except one at the executive level. And we've turned over all our good operations folks at a top level. All are really good operators, the smart franchisees, whether it's Hinkle or Willoughby or Cox or Patton or Sullins, all the smart money's running for the door.
Now, we have the Super Bowl coming up. How big of a day is this for the Papa John's franchise?
Yeah, that'll be the best day. Super Bowl Sunday is probably the best day of the year for pizza delivery. So it's going to be a great day for all pizzerias. Any
prediction on the game?
You got to go with the Bengals. I grew up 80 miles down the road from Cincinnati. It's the Queen City. It's part of my heritage, the Ohio River. And, this young quarterback, he's turned that whole city around. I'm just happy for a native sister city to do as well as Cincinnati, and I'm pulling for the Bengals. So go Bengals. Hoping for a great game.
John Schnatter, founder of Papa John's. Thank you.
Thank you.
Truckers protesting the vaccine mandate are planning a convoy in the U.S., similar to the one we saw in Canada over the last few weeks. It could start as early as this weekend, and the Department of Homeland Security warns it could impact the Super Bowl. NTD's Melina Wisecup has more.
The Department of Homeland Security is tracking potential truck convoys that are expected to sweep through multiple U.S. cities over the next few weeks. The trucker protests may be similar to what we've seen in Canada. In recent days, protests against the COVID-19 mandates have amassed along the U.S.-Canada border. Today at noon, Ambassador Bridge was completely shut down in both directions, blocking traffic between the U.S. and Canada. The Biden administration is now working to divert cargo.
There still are some arteries open, and we have to make sure they stay open. But yes, our administration is talking to Canadians, trying to deal with particularly the supply chain issues that have been elevated by this event.
And the DHS is concerned those same pileups could happen in the streets of D.C.
I think it is powerful to watch. It is an incredible groundswell. It's an organic groundswell from the people. And I think the Canadian truckers are standing up not just for the freedom of Canadians, but for the freedom of Americans.
The Department of Homeland Security says truckers are planning to start in California and make their way to D.C., warning that the convoy will potentially start this weekend and impact the Super Bowl. The agency is now working with local law enforcement to help secure the game.
We have no information of a specific credible threat against the Super Bowl. What this is all about is planning and preparation to prevent any incident from occurring.
DHS told the Epoch Times in an email, quote, "We have not observed specific calls for violence within the United States associated with this convoy, and are working closely with our federal, state, and local partners to continuously assess the threat environment and keep our community safe." The truck protests in Canada have disrupted supply chains. Automakers' operations have been impacted. Delivery delays have caused companies like GM to cut production at several plants in the U.S. and Canada this week. When asked if the White House is worried about similar disruptions when truckers make their way to D.C., White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki said this.
Now, everybody can peacefully protest. We fully support that, but it's important to note where the disruption is occurring.
Melina, the protesters are planning to make their way here to D.C. What more can you tell us?
So we can expect to start seeing truckers gather here in D.C. by early March, and intersections like this could be piled up with trucks. The DHS warns that it could severely disrupt traffic and affect law enforcement operations. Now, as for the exact date that we expect to see those truckers gathering here, that's not 100% clear yet. The organizers on Facebook said that they're planning to leave from California, heading over here to D.C. on March 5th. But the DHS, which is tracking this convoy, says those truckers could arrive here as early as March 1st, the same day as President Biden's State of the Union address. But we're still working to confirm some of those details. Steve?
Thanks, Melina. So we'll continue to follow this. And the Biden White House is facing growing pressure to ease pandemic restrictions. They said yesterday that they're working on a less restrictive pandemic response plan, but they're waiting for more data and guidance from national health officials. States, on the other hand, are not waiting. 9 blue states recently announced an end or partial end to masking mandates. And governors of Virginia and Maryland are weighing in on the next steps to take in terms of school mask mandates. Today, Maryland Governor Larry Hogan asked the State Board of Education to rescind the mask policy in schools. And Governor Glenn Youngkin of Virginia promoted a bill passed yesterday by state lawmakers. The bill would allow parents to decide whether their children should wear a mask in school without having to provide a certified reason. Youngkin said it is a bipartisan movement to get parents back in charge of their kids' lives. Also joining Virginia, New York, Illinois, Massachusetts, and Rhode Island, who've all announced an end date for mask requirements and other COVID restrictions. Today, the Senate passed a bipartisan bill which aims to end the use of forced arbitration for sexual harassment and assault claims. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer and key sponsors of the bill applauded its passage.
This is, if you could ever say any legislation was long overdue, this is it.
So this is one of the most significant workplace reforms in American history. The bill is going to help fix a broken system that protects perpetrators and corporations and ends the days of silencing survivors.
So to all the women and men, but mostly women, you're going to have a right today that you did not have yesterday.
The Senate approved the legislation, indicating broad bipartisan support. It now heads to President Biden's desk for his signature. The White House has expressed full support of the bill. The bill passed the House with a sweeping bipartisan majority of 335 to 97 earlier in the week. Senator Gillibrand sponsored the legislation. In a press release, she explained that the bill will prevent perpetrators from pushing survivors of sexual harassment and assault into, quote, the secretive, biased process of forced arbitration. According to lawmakers, over 60 million American workers are subjected to these types of provisions in employment contracts. A group of U.S. lawmakers is seeking to sanction thousands of Chinese Communist Party officials. The Chinese propaganda machine now threatens revenge, vowing to sanction the whole United States Congress. The television ratings for the Beijing Olympics are at historic lows. Congresswoman Yvette Harrell weighs in on the Winter Games, as well as her legislation aimed to redirect taxpayer funding away from our adversaries like China. Washington, D.C. police have arrested a 16-year-old boy in connection with bomb threats to several local schools, and Kamala Harris's husband had to be evacuated. The investigation continues with the help of the federal government. Hello and welcome back to NTD's Capitol Report. A new bill seeks to sanction thousands of officials from the Chinese Communist regime, including their leader. This as U.S. lawmakers warn about Beijing's propaganda efforts. NTD's Iris Tao has more.
About 20 House Republicans introduced the Stop CCP Act on Wednesday. If passed, it would bar all members of the Chinese Communist Party's National Congress and their families from entering the U.S. or owning any U.S. property. That includes Xi Jinping, the head of the Chinese Communist Party.
It's important we not overlook the sins of the host nation.
The bill comes as other lawmakers are warning about China's propaganda tactics to cover its human rights abuses, especially during the Olympics.
China has carefully crafted their image to distract the world from their blatant human rights abuses and their totalitarianism.
Meanwhile, Hu Xijin, the former chief editor of the Chinese regime's major mouthpiece, Global Times, said on Thursday that China will sanction all members of the U.S. Congress, including the U.S. president, if the bill is passed.
This is a new Cold War. We have to be clear-eyed about our enemies' intentions, their strategies, and their tactics.
This, as Senator Rick Scott in a Thursday speech stressed the need to counter the Chinese regime. He adds,
I don't believe this is the Chinese people. It's an unfortunate regime they're under. This is an attack on General Secretary Xi and his genocidal regime.
Reporting in D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
New Mexico Congresswoman Yvette Harrell says that taxpayer money should not be going to fund our adversaries directly or indirectly, as it did in funding gain-of-function research in China via the EcoHealth Alliance. Representative Harrell is taking action, and she told us about it earlier. Congresswoman Yvette Harrell, thank you so much for joining us on the Capitol Report.
Welcome. So glad to be here. Thank you.
Now, Congresswoman, right now there's a mega PR war taking place in that the Chinese Communist Party is hosting the Olympic Games, where they're seeking to normalize everything that is wrong with the communist regime via Western sponsors and advertisers promoting the Beijing Games. On the other hand, you've introduced a bill called the Stop Funding Our Adversaries Act, which in large part aims to hold China accountable. If you could, tell us what exactly your bill aims to do.
Right. The bill is a great piece of legislation, and I think the timing couldn't be better. What this bill aims to do is to stop spending taxpayer dollars, federal funds, in China for research and development in the way of whether it's contracts, subcontract, grants, any other vehicle that would allow federal money to go to China for research. Look, we have the ingenuity here. We have the smartest, brightest minds in the world, and we need to keep those dollars here and protect our intellectual property and use the American exceptionalism that is so important to the fabric of our nation. But why would we send money to China to help the China Communist Party when we can build America stronger, better, and help create jobs in the process?
Now, Congresswoman, you've also been a proponent of removing red tape to make sure the United States is producing our own medical supplies and other medical-related products. What have you seen, and why is this of concern?
Well, that goes right into the second bill that we're introducing this week, called Protecting America Lives Act of 2022. And essentially what this will do is direct the Food and Drug Administration to do a report so that we can understand what are the barriers, why are we reliant on the People's Republic of China for medical, pharmaceutical and medical drugs and equipment. Let's use those dollars here. Let's innovate in America and not be reliant on a country such as China, especially when we look back 2 years where we saw there's so much secrecy and it's shrouded with unknowns when you're talking about the communist regime in China. And what we want to do here is find out why aren't we developing research and manufacturing pharmaceuticals and drugs that are important to the American people. And did you realize that over 70% of common drugs are shipped every day from China to the United States, such as Tylenol, ibuprofen? We should be producing that here and not be reliant on China, especially with products that are so very vital to our livelihoods, to our lives, and to the American people.
Now, just back to the Olympics again for a moment here. The Associated Press has just reported that it's on track to become the lowest rated Olympics in American history in terms of viewership. It appears America may have gotten the memo about the CCP and have turned away in protest. Do you think American sponsors, both media and otherwise, have gotten that memo?
I think what we need to do is, I think there is that memo is circulating. I think our message is resonating loud and clear. I think the American people are in their own way protesting by not watching. And here's the thing, no one is trying to take away from the hard work of our athletes, what our athletes are doing in terms of what they've spent their careers doing. But we need to stake our claim and put America values first. And we are not open for business as usual. We need to stake our claim. We need to keep our taxpayer dollars here. We need to invest in American ingenuity. We need to stop paying adversaries to protect us in the sense of whether it's energy, whether it's medications, whether it's contracts for research. Look what happened 2 years ago. That's as far as we have to look to really awaken the American public about Wuhan virus. I mean, COVID was kept such a secret, and now look what's happening. It's been exposed to what really China is responsible for the deaths around the globe. So I think it is resonating, and I think that it is correct. The viewership probably is down, and I'm thankful that people are starting to wake up and understand just how serious this is.
Congresswoman Yvette Herro, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
President Biden joined Health Secretary Javier Becerra and Virginia Congresswoman Abigail Spanberger to give remarks on lowering health care costs.
In my proposal, we will hold drug companies accountable for the absurd price increases. Here's how. Drug companies that increase their prices faster than the rate of inflation once the price is set will face a steep tax.
The president focused mostly on the need to lower prescription drug prices, saying that Americans pay 2 to 3 times more for prescriptions than any other nation. He proposed to cap the amounts paid for prescription drugs and to allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices. Biden added that lowering the cost of drugs will help alleviate the cost of inflation for American families. Police are charging a Washington, D.C. teenager in connection to bomb threats made against several area schools on Tuesday and Wednesday. After a phone threat on Tuesday, the Secret Service evacuated Vice President Kamala Harris's husband, Douglas Emhoff, from a D.C. high school. However, the police have not found any explosives. The police department says it arrested a 16-year-old male and continues to investigate with federal partners. Officials from the FBI and the ATF have also briefed Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas on the issue. That's all we have for you tonight on the Capitol Report. Thank you for tuning in. From Washington, D.C., I'm Steve Lance, and we'll see you tomorrow.